I suppose maybe I was supposed to be in Pripyat or whatever. Maybe somebody was impersonating me. Probably so. I feel like somebody was impersonating me in Pripyat, and someone found out about it. Or somebody was trying to do some sort of like time space shift or whatever, forgetting who I was and all the things that had been done. I'm not exactly sure why the Chernobyl reactor really went critical. Like I said, it could have been because somebody was doing a Lucifer impersonation in Pripyat, trying to say that it was okay, not knowing about who actually invented it or who had played a key role in the Philippines and in Windscale and was basically the granddaddy of nuclear energy himself. Me, 7-year-old child. So, then anyway, Chernobyl accident. Now, based on what I knew from Windscale and everything else, I know the volatility of uranium, basically. I always did kind of know, even as a child. And I know that you can't really put water on it. In fact, like I say, in the Philippines, what I devised instead was actually using explosives to blow out the flames. Because what you can do is you can take small uranium fires, you can basically blow out the flames using an explosive. And that was the only way you could basically stop the fire, which really didn't stop the fire. It just separated the uranium out into the ground, and then you just use a special suit to basically pick up individual pieces and then don't go there again for a long time. Or scrape the dirt off and then put that somewhere. The top 4 inches of soil is about what you had to scrape off, which is what they did basically in the Philippines. After they had several fires. So I know. So my best course of action in Chernobyl was basically using concrete, which is a double-edged sword because, well, I mean, it provides water to the fire so it cools, but it also separates the reaction and basically locks up the reactive material inside of the concrete, which kind of actually apparently turns uranium into basically a jelly-like stuff, which I didn't know until later. But it makes it into hot jelly, basically. Superheated jelly, which is good and bad because, I mean, well, because now you have more radioactive material to deal with. But it puts the fire out, which is the second problem. So it's either sit there and let it release radioactive gas as it basically melts down and consumes the reactor slowly, or you pour concrete on it and basically lock it up inside. You know, basically you dilute the solution, the uranium enough, or the isotope enough that it basically solidifies at some point. And then just becomes highly, highly, highly radioactive from that point on. Which is, like I said, good and bad. So water wouldn't have done it, because water just kind of like turns into vapor, which actually just creates the problem even worse. Pour water at it. Now you got vapor. Oh, that's wonderful. So now you just picked up everything that was on the ground and put it up in there. Basically made the problem worse. So water wouldn't do it, of course. They started using water, and then my best solution at the time was like, once I was mildly informed about the situation, was concrete. That was my best solution. Dilute dilute the uranium enough that it basically cools down, pretty much, and mixes and dilutes enough that the reaction stops. Pour a bunch of concrete on it. That was the best solution. And it was the safest solution because you just throw the pipe up in there and then blah, 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 which is kind of good and bad because any reactor, well, the system's probably toast anyway, so basically everything is basically just cooking on the floor pretty much. So basically concrete and lots of it was my only solution for Chernobyl. It was my best guess. It was like, well, you need to cool it. So some water, and you need something that's going to dilute it. Concrete. That's the best. That was my best guess. You know, with a 2-second. Well, what should be done? First evacuate, then concrete. And that was my best solution. And concrete really doesn't do all that much good because you got to use steel. Actually, realistically, what we did in the Philippines, or what they did in the Philippines, was wood, then steel. And maybe another layer of wood, and that kind of stopped most of the particles except for 1 or 2 or 3. Except for 3 particles, I believe. There's only 3 particles which get by all that. Depending on your isotope, of course. Pure uranium is different because it's all isotopes going at you. Whereas selective isotopes are a little bit different. But when you cook down other substances, you get different isotopes. So it's like, well, you know, you never know what you got there. So my best solution was lots of concrete. I know it's not exactly high tech, but hey, that's all I could come up with. I was like, evacuate and concrete. And that from the expert was the best I had, really. I mean, not exactly. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Rick Bush would probably say, "Oh, anyone can come up with that." Like, well, what the fuck do you expect me to do? I mean, with NASA suits, well, you still have the problem of the fire, and the only thing that's going to put out the fire, which doesn't do any good, is basically explosive. And just putting out the fire doesn't do any good. You have to scatter the uranium until it stops reacting, basically. Which is the information that we learned in the Philippines. So, concrete, which is kind of like I don't know. It's not. I don't know how many people would have just thought concrete. I just thought dilution and cooling, and I went concrete. Which doesn't really do anything for the reactivity, but it does stop the fire and lock it up, and it will lock it in place. And then hopefully the dirt underneath the soil, because uranium or radiation is going to be going out the soil through the walls of the basement, and basically beaming up into space and beating all over, which is why the shell goes over it. But hopefully the outside of the reaction container is mostly intact. So, you know, it's funny. When you steal a reactor and impersonate someone who you're not, it's amazing what happens. To quote Gilbert Godfrey. Trying to steal a reactor and build it without really knowing about it. And then run it behind my back while I'm doing America. Oh well. But my reactors were supposed to be self-cooling, and that was one of the things I wanted to test out, but people said, I mean, in theory, it was supposed to work. The scientists said it would work, so I didn't know. Not my problem. So I guess some scientists made a mistake there. Oh well, you know. I forget how it is. It's supposed to re-adhere. I don't know. I didn't understand it myself really at the time. I was like, how does that work? I don't get it. Whatever. Anyway, though, but that was the Chernobyl reactors, which were supposed to be self-fueling somehow. Did some sort of reaction that some scientists understood, but I didn't understand. I was like, I don't get it. But whatever. You know, and apparently he was wrong about something. Don't know which part. Anyway, I wasn't actually there at the Chernobyl reactor or the town or anything, and didn't know about it until I saw it on the news in America, where I was like, huh, that's interesting. I was just thinking about what a failure would be like. Huh. Oh. Until someone finally said, don't you know that's your reactor? And I'm like, what? Wind scale? Huh? What? Oh, yeah. It's so annoying when people try to steal something and then lie to you about it and then fuck it up. Don't you think? Wouldn't that be annoying to you? You have all these people die, you have to deal with all these situations, and then people are like, whatever, and just take away your stuff and pretend like you never existed, and then wonder why the fuck things go wrong. I don't know. It's just rude. Fortunately, they got it under control, and my concrete actually worked. Amazing. I don't know how it worked, really. I was just like, concrete?